intellectuals, writers, and friends whose heart beats for culture, untiring activists of the Kashmiri Pandit cause, I am thankful to Prakash for asking me to say something about my book titled Rites and Rituals of Kashmiri Brahmins. The book was published in August 2010 after some research for about 2 years. So this is a perspectival look at what I have written in this book titled Rites and Rituals of Kashmiri Brahmins. Why Kashmiri Brahmins and why not Pandits? Because Kashmiri Pandits is only a recent appellation. Before that, from the beginning, from the Nilmat era, we were not called Kashmiri Pandits at that time, we were Brahmins. And anthropologically and sociologically also, we are Brahmins. So, it's a study of that kind, so I have used the word Brahmins and not Pandits here, though obviously it's synonymous. I'll just give a little background, small background on this. Passionately drawn towards, I hope you will bear with me for some time, and I hope that you will not be bored with what I am saying. Passionately drawn towards exploring aspects of Kashmir's cultural and intellectual traditions, though I was from the beginning. I was not particularly inclined towards venturing into an area like rituals and rites. Rituals, I must confess, were anathema to me, as I considered them to be nothing more than superfluous outer ceremony which had nothing or little to do with religious life in the deeper sense. So when UNESCO scholar Professor D.N. Saraswati chose the subject of rituals and rites of Kashmiri and ritual arts of Kashmiri Hindus for me to work on as a research project for the Janapada Sampada Department of IGNCA, Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. During a brief meeting I had with him in early 2002, I did not know what to say. He was heading that department at the time and was a social anthropologist of eminence. Rituals, he explained, noticing my discomfiture, were one of the bonds that existed between the Hindu community of Kashmir and the cultural life of Hindus of the country at large, and should not be understood in a narrow sense. They gave you a sense of identity. They give you a sense of identity. I saw his point. But how to proceed on a subject you have been holding in contempt all your life? So as I decided to start my study in right earnest, I understood I had to work on regional peculiarities of the rituals, traditions and practices of the Kashmiri Brahmins. I had to comprehend the formative consciousness and epistemological matrices from which they have sprung. I had to forge my own methodological and conceptual tools. I thought, and that meant adopting an approach involving study of related textual material as well as field work. This called for having discussions and with available ritual experts and resource persons, and they were hardly around either in Delhi or in Jammu for any worthwhile discussions about regional peculiarities and of the ritual traditions and practices of Kashmiri Brahmins. The last of the greatest amongst them, Pandit Raghunath Ukilu, had passed away several years ago. But Pandit Kashinath Handu was there. The related text too had to be obtained. I sought the help of Professor Bansidhar Potedar, and it was he who came to my rescue. and arranged interviews with Pandit Handu and other scholars who were still in the field. That proved to be of some help. At least I was able to clear doubts on some points about which I was still vague in my mind. Not a real breakthrough though, as many who were thought to be knowledgeable about things did not exactly prove to be so. Just at that time I read Fritz Stahl, a German expert on Vedic fire ritual, and found him saying that Asian rituals are rituals without a religion, creating doubts about the meaning of ritual itself. Rites become rituals, he has written, when they are provided with religious interpretation. At the same time, he has emphasized that ritual traditions have social significance, in as much as that they identify groups and distinguish them from each other. It now became necessary to arrive at a basic line of approach to the question of what actually constituted Hindu religious ritual and what could be defined as variation and deviation at the regional level. Did rituals really have any meaning? And how did they help in defining identity? I noted in this context that Richard H. Davis, another eminent Western scholar, but of medieval Shaiva ritual, was highly critical of such scholars who tend to characteristically, I'm quoting it, characteristically present Indian rituals as instances of highly elaborate, routinized behavior, ignoring the philosophical foundations on which they are based. A focus now emerged for my study, and I found it possible to move ahead in the new light in which I began to see my subject now. I came to understand rituals as established patterns of religious activity embedded in the cultural consciousness of a people. Even as they seek to link mundane or natural reality with the divine or transnatural, they combine in their structure mental, physical, and verbal actions which achieve a symbolical character, giving the whole a meaning and significance through invocation of the sacred and transcendent, beyond what any natural process can give it. As Professor Dayakrishnan has pointed out, rituals transform the biological cycle into a cultural cycle. That is why he explains, in all cultures, birth and death are not just biological phenomena, but profound cultural events associated with a lot of rituals and ceremonies which transform the biological into the cultural. The ritual processes that set into motion this transformation of the natural or causal are closely related to the attitude of a civilization to time and space and their sacralization and symbolization. Viewing things in the Indian context, it can be said that rites and rituals that they are intertwined throughout with human life and human activity, beginning with the birth of an individual or even earlier with conception and continuing through crucial stages of his or her life up to his or her death. Collectively they are called samskars. Apart from these passage of rite or life cycle rituals as they are called, there are ceremonies related to different forms of worship in which the blessings of God, goddesses are invoked for fulfillment of worldly desires or for spiritual enlightenment. These worship rituals, commonly known as puja, may externally vary in some respects from place to place or in different social milieux, but they have the same basic internal structure. Whether seen as encoded processes of change or expressions of reverence for the sacred, the fundamental ritual activities prevalent among Kashmiri Hindus, as among other Hindu communities of the country, can be broadly classified under the following heads. 1. Samskars, or the life cycle, passage of time rituals from birth to death. Then there is birth, then there is childhood, then there is adolescence, then there is marriage, then there is death. So these are called life cycle or passage of time rituals. Number 2, puja or worship services. Number 3, tantric practices. And number 4, ritual arts. Eminent ritual expert Jayant Burdey has divided religious ritual into these 4 categories: worship rituals, rites of passage, festive rituals, and sacraments. According to Musahi, Tachikawa, and Shaon Hino, religious activity can be divided into 2 kinds: that which takes as its goal the spiritual well-being of the individual, and that which has the purpose of enabling the group or the society to operate smoothly, like festivals, initiation rites, etc. Following these 2 noted Japanese, they are Japanese scholars. Following these 2 noted Japanese scholars of Indian rituals, it was the study of samskars or life cycle rituals of Kashmiri Hindus that I took up first. As these for the common people form the core of religious activity. आप जनेऊ पहनते हैं, आप चोटी रखते हैं, आप शादी में संस्कार करते हैं, तो वो they form the core of religious life for the common man. I took up, in both cases, as I noted, rituals serve as means of communicating with divine beings or transnatural powers that are believed to guide and influence the course of human affairs. While benevolent and favorable influences are sought to be attracted and appeased, as Dr. Rajbali Pandey has pointed out, ritual devices are used to ward off or banish harmful and hostile influences. Evil and uncanny spirits, goblins, demons, etc., often by invoking the help of deities and gods. In fact, ritual practices all over the world follow a similar pattern: purification, banishment, propitiation, and consecration. After these general characteristics that rituals display, I went on to describe the constituent elements of the rites and rituals of Kashmiri Hindus in accordance with the analysis provided by the pioneering expert of Hindu sanskars, Dr. Rajbali Pandey. Agni or fire is the first and most sacred of these components, as it is being worshipped as the presiding deity of sacrifices and domestic rites and ceremonies since the Vedic times. Agnim ide purohitam. Fire purifies. Fire purifies, consecrates, and acts as a protector and witness to human intent. Offerings are made into fire and threw it to the gods in almost every ritual performance. Water, a symbol of life itself, is the next important constituent for its purifying effects and powers to remove contamination. Bathing, especially in sacred rivers, sipping water, achaman, and lustration or sprinkling of water are believed to be means of removing physical as well as spiritual impurities. Kalshalav, you would say, that's lustration, sprinkling of water. Because water is a symbol of life. Prayers, appeals, and blessings are another class of constituents that can be placed next on the list. Prayer, says the eminent philosopher, Professor Dayakrishnan, seeks the intervention of the transcendent in the normal processes that are supposed to be governed by causality. Prayers for success, health, long life, happiness, obtaining children,